You are listening to Weekend Debrief, a podcast of Grace Church in Dallas, Oregon, where we look back at the events and activities of the weekend in our church community and the world and talk about them in light of the gospel. Thank you for listening.
Well, welcome to Weekend Debrief. I'm Pastor West.
I'm Pastor Dave.
And here we are again, going quarantine style.
That's right.
For Weekend Debrief. So
coming to you from my no longer having a home office, so I'm in the master bedroom because of my daughter, and got her home from the hospital yesterday, and so just working from home this week. But I used to have a home office I could record from. Now it's the master bedroom in the corner. So I've been banished to the corner of the bedroom.
There you go. So hey, quite a praise with Maggie's surgery, and I know Amy has posted some things on Facebook. But according to initial thoughts, the doctors are thinking you guys were still going to be in the hospital today.
Yeah. So we are very grateful for the prayers of our church, and we are very blessed that we were able to come home when we did. So the question mark going into the surgery was, the plate that had been put in there from a couple of years ago had to come out. Would we get a new plate put in to her leg, or would she get a hip cast? Yeah. And the surgeon, what we were praying for is that it would be clear to the surgeon which route was best, and it was. So the bone hadn't healed enough. The cyst it was small, but it just started coming back again. So he's able to clear that out. And so she has new hardware in, and but the surgeon initially was concerned with the amount of blood she had lost. It wasn't excessive, but he just wasn't sure if she'd be stable enough after one night to come home. And but her blood work was great the next day, and she, her pain was being managed really well, and she was actually getting mobile quicker than they anticipated. So physical therapy was very pleased with her progress. So we came home yesterday afternoon, and so I'll be working from home the rest of this week, just making sure she's doing okay. It went great.
Yeah, well, that's excellent. Great first message to dive into Job, and got a big chunk coming up this week that you're covering.
We got 2 weeks that are going to be massive. So chapters 3 to 28, and then 29 to I think through 41 is where I cut it off. So we're gonna be covering quite a bit of real estate over the next 2 weeks. But it was a good first week, but heavy, I think. The story is incredible, but very, very heavy and dark. So, but great to get into this story. I think it's very applicable to our times and where people are at.
Yeah, I was thinking just as we were going through and just how Job was confronted, while this messenger was still talking, yet another came, and while he was and you almost felt like, that sounds like 2020 almost, and
it does. It does. So definitely. Well, coronavirus is still going, or I guess it started with Kobe Bryant dying. We haven't really even covered that. I mean, that's almost forgotten, but quite a big profile death, and then coronavirus, and then the George Floyd and other high profile deaths, followed by the protests, then the riots, for us the forest fires, and the election.
Oh, you see. Okay. All right. So everything has to stay calm through Christmas, right?
That's right.
Christmas is going to make it all better. So
that's right. I mean, there is that, like Christmas music. We can start listening to that. I mean, Christmas trees can start going up. This year, my family, actually, Amy and I decided, our girls were less than impressed with us, but we decided this was the year to get a fake Christmas tree. And so the thing that I had sworn to my parents when they got their fake Christmas tree, I swore to them I would never do it, because that's just not Christmas if it's a fake tree. And now here I am. I'm turning 40 this year, and I'm getting my own fake tree. So,
oh, man, I have been teetering on that for the last couple of years, and there just strong opposition in my household. So
I bet.
won't happen this year, but yeah, the fake trees can really do some cool things with lights.
Oh man,
Right?
yeah.
I mean, yeah. So that's kind of my angle. Like we could really do some cool things with the lights and set it to music and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah. The one we're getting has LED lights. It can do both color and white, so you can
Oh,
just change it depending on what you want. It'll even
right.
fade in between the two and
Yeah.
everything else. And
Yeah.
they've really come a long way in how they look. Um,
Right.
the branches look a lot more realistic.
Yeah.
And supposedly the one we got is like you don't have to do a lot of like the tweaking of branches. It's just
Okay.
you plop the three stages together, plug it in, and
Yeah.
off you go. So we'll see if it's that easy, but that's what they say. So
Right.
and yeah, because of the lack of smell, we're getting a Christmas scented essential oil that we're going to diffuse.
Oh,
And there you go.
well,
So
see, there you
it'll
go.
smell
Look,
like Christmas. It'll look like Christmas,
that's
and
right.
we're going to put up the tree next week because
Hey,
why not? It'll last the whole season.
that's right. You don't have to worry about it drying out.
That's right. We don't have to worry about getting a wheelchair out into the mud and tromp around finding a tree.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Man. Well, that's good. We kind of got off on Christmas a little bit, didn't we?
that's right.
Yeah.
I mean,
So
we could do love it or hate it. I love Christmas, so I mean,
that's
here we go. But
yeah, yeah. Oh no, this is good. Um, yeah. So one of the questions, and it really ties in right at the start of the Job passage, where it starts in Job 6. It says, "One day the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came with him." And you had talked about really the title of the Satan,
yeah,
and really referring to that as the accuser. So one of the questions that came up was, is that the accuser, the Satan, is that Satan, the being, or is that another character with just the title, or is it both? Um, uh, and I know that, I mean, it's easy to kind of got to be careful not to get stuck in the weeds here on that, because that's really not the main point of the passage. But what did you come across anything in your studying on that, and what are some thoughts on that?
yeah. No, it actually is a great question, and it's something that's much debated. And uh, I don't think anyone's come to a consensus on it. The scholars, anyway. So yeah, there is a theory that because it's more of a title, and it's not typically it doesn't line up exactly with what we see elsewhere in scripture on how Satan functions and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I mean, the Satan, it's just the Hebrew way of pronouncing it, but there is a definite article, so the prior to it,
Hmm.
which can happen when it's a proper name as well, but it really does seem and feel more like a title given in that passage. But maybe it's just an angelic being that is playing the role of a questioner or accuser. Is it an evil being or not? I mean, so there, the jury's kind of out on that. It
Right.
seems like, so then the other side of that is, yeah, it's the same Satan. And, but then you run into, well, what's he doing presenting himself before God like that? And
Right.
so there's a lot of questions that raises. And I think we have to be careful. Yeah. Like you said, not to try to answer questions the passage doesn't answer.
Hmm.
Um, such as, where does this all take place? We're not really sure. It doesn't say. It just says that wherever God is, these beings are presenting themselves to him. Um, and the accuser, the Satan or Satan, however you want to, look at it, is one of those beings that presents themselves. Like I said on Sunday, it's unclear whether this was typical and by invitation, or if this was, he kind of crashes the party and came uninvited to create an issue in front of God, which I mean could be the case. Um, what it So what we do know is that what's being described would have been common a common way to think of this kind of heavenly council idea, yet with the kind of the biblical truth of God as the supreme God, that these other spiritual beings are all subject to him, unlike the common idea of the day, which was these spiritual beings in tandem, these, this plurality of gods would together as a council rule over everything. No, there's a one true God, and every other spiritual being and every other being in the entire universe is subject to that God. So so is that in heaven? I mean, that's where we start getting into, like, we're trying to ascribe it's kind of like trying to describe a three-dimensional world in two dimensions.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So there's the spiritual realm. Like, is it a place? It, like, what we try to figure that out. So we have the pictures of the throne room or whatever. Is that where it's taking place, like in Isaiah 6, that vision?
Mm-hmm.
Sure, but is that like we're just starting to now get into some. Is it like a multi-dimension thing, like in science fiction? I mean, you start playing it out and trying to get too literal, and you really start to run into some trouble.
Yeah.
And speculating on things the Bible doesn't really speak to. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So all that to say, it seems best when looking at this character. To me, it seems best to connect him with the other things that we know about Satan, the enemy of God,
mm-hmm.
from Genesis 3 to the passages in the New Testament I referenced, 1 Peter 5, Revelation 12, and then it does seem to be the same being to me, but that certainly is a disputed fact, and doesn't necessarily, we can't know 100% with 100% certainty.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I
guess all that to say, we don't know. But so I think I've said it on here before. My theology prof used to tell us, with situations like this, you come to the conclusion that it amounts for the most amount of data with the least amount of problems.
Yeah.
So which view has accounts for the most amount of data with the least amount of problems? That's the one you go with. And to me, it seems to check most of the boxes to say it is Satan.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know if he was invited or not, if that was common or not. It doesn't really matter. The fact is he did. And, therefore we find ourselves in this situation. The point of those first two, of that scene is to present Job as not being deserving of what he is experiencing, right, which is the premise of the whole book. So, is this retribution principle that I talked about, of the good get good and the bad get bad, is that how everything in the universe is run? And the answer is clearly no. No, there's a God of incredible, infinite wisdom, and he does what he does, and we need to trust him. It is really the what the book is about. So this scene really sets that up.
Right. Yeah, and I like just the perspective of being able to, because I think sometimes when the story gets told, you kind of leave going, man, it just feels like God just hung Job out to dry. But really to look at, it was, there was a lot of, God had some pride in who Job was, and his righteousness, and how he, and so there was while there was some things that, obviously some devastating issues that Job was going to have to go through, you definitely see in the hand of God through it all, and that God wanted Job's life spared, didn't allow his life to be taken, and yet, and then ultimately, Job, those things in his life that were taken were restored.
Right.
And it's I think it's good just having that perspective of God wasn't saying, well, let me just pick out the righteous one and now go get him.
Mm-hmm.
There was more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah. And certainly God bears responsibility, but also the blame squarely lands in the accuser, Satan's lap.
Yeah.
He is the one doing wrongdoing, not God.
Yeah.
We see in James, don't think that when you're being tested, that God is tempting you to do evil, because God can't do that. He's, so there's that. God acts and is sovereign, yet he maintains integrity and righteousness in that. God is never the one that sins, even though he uses sinful actions of others to bring about his ultimate plan and purpose, as we see in the death and resurrection of Christ. Yeah. Evil was done, yet that was part of his plan. So if we ever get caught up in how does that work, that God can use evil to bring about good, well, that's how the cross came to be. So let's not get too particular here.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you bring up a good point. God does eventually restore Job. I intentionally didn't bring that up this last Sunday, because I wanted us to not to just be like, but he just, restores everything. No, we need to sit in the weight of where chapters 1 and 2 ends. And that is, there's no answers. There's no relief. Job's sitting with his friends in silence and has lost everything. That's how the chapter ends. So we shouldn't too quickly go to the restoration, because we should sit because maybe there's a restoration for us like Job down the road, but when you're in that moment, the restoration isn't seen, and it may not come for a while. So the power of the passage is Job is trusting God. And as we'll see, he even struggles the book's about his struggle with trusting God, but he tries and works to maintain his trust in God, even when there are no answers and no restoration on the horizon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think even what we're as a people throughout in the entire world, not just Oregon, not just the United States, but as the people in the entire world are going through COVID and the pandemic and the different stages that each country is at. There is that sense that I know I've asked that question. Okay, God, how much longer? How much longer are we going to have to go through this? Are we ever going to get back to normal? And I think sometimes, I know for me, just looking at, if I'm always looking for that restoration piece, when things return back to normal, then one, it's easy to miss out on the lesson and what we need to learn during the trial. But two, it's also so easy to become disheartened and bitter and cynical, because we tend to have more of an inward focus when that happens, when we're always going, yeah, but I deserve this and I deserve better than this, and in reality, we don't. What we have is by the grace of God, anyways. But yeah, so I think having that proper perspective is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, you brought up one thing about Job's wife, and I've always chuckled, because Tim Hawkins had a little sketch that he did on Job's wife, and it was Satan took away everything and attacked everything, but even Satan wouldn't touch his wife, and it was it was kind of that. So there's right, wrong, or indifferent. She always gets that kind of that bad rap of just curse God and die. But I thought I really appreciated how you brought that out, that she was going through the same emotions, the same ups and downs and roller coasters. She just lost everything.
Right.
All of her kids, her wealth, along with Job. She's seeing her life come unraveled, and I guess I never really looked at it as maybe that was a way of her showing sympathy to Job, or empathy, and just saying, Job, just be done with it. Not that it was right for him to curse God, but I thought that was I thought that was really good to bring out that different perspective, and how we usually just, kind of gloss over that, or we just write her off as just being, a sinful woman, and never, never having the right perspective.
Right. Yeah. It's interesting. A few of the authors that I read, commentaries from, brought that out, especially referencing back to, I think it was like Augustine and others who referenced the wife as basically the accomplice of Satan, that
Mm,
she was, you know, encouraging him to do what Satan was trying to get him to do, and curse God and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, if you think about her as a person, then yeah, you have to understand that she also is grieving, and is watching her husband suffer. And I mean, there comes a point, I think, isn't it? I mean, that's why we struggle with, and why we see things like suicide and whatever, because it feels like it comes to a point where, well, it would be better just to be done. And it almost feels like she's wishing that of her husband more so than, you know, just being angry at him and, you know, rejecting him. It's more, she's completely overwhelmed. She just wants to see his misery come to an end, because in some ways that'll help her misery. She can move on then. Um, and so, yeah, is it compassion wrongfully implemented, or what was she truly a despicable person? Um, you don't get any sense of her before that. So, except
no,
that, I mean, it seems like Job was a godly man, of course, and it seems like his kids were. I mean, he was leading his family well.
right,
So why do we assume that his wife just went off the rails right away? So,
right, yeah,
not that what she said was good, like you said, at all, but I mean, you can certainly sympathize more with her.
yeah, yeah. I think there's probably a good lesson in there for just how we should probably spend more time viewing people as people, right?
Right.
And really understanding stories, and before we draw conclusions, hastily drawn conclusions. So
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, that's good. Yeah, I think the just as you kind of wrapped up the message, some really good um, reminders on is God trustworthy? And of course, the easy Sunday school answer is, of course he is. Yes, he is. But in the midst of struggles and trials, it's not always easy to say, or to be reminded of that. And so just, yeah, remembering some of those. I mean, one, the testimony of Job, as we're going to see as we finish out the book. But then when you look at the whole of Scripture, you brought that out, that yeah, God can be trusted.
Right.
Um, personal personal experience. I'm not necessarily a journaling type person. I know the benefits of it, but I'll tell you, there one of the great benefits is being able to journal going through a difficult time, and then being able to journal as you come out of that, and looking back to see that God is faithful. It's kind of those spiritual markers. So it's good. And then just the it's not the simple fact, but it is the foundation of Jesus,
Yeah.
of what Jesus did. He and in nowhere are we left alone to walk through these struggles on our own. We're reminded of that multiple times. So
Yeah, I think,
yeah,
the problem of suffering, it's been written on by so many people. There's been so much ink spilled on that topic. How do you account for evil in our world and pain and suffering in our world, and reconcile that with a holy, righteous, and loving God who's
mhm,
all powerful? So the question always is, if God is all powerful, loving, and holy, why does he let this happen in my life? Why doesn't he just take it away? And I think Job shows us there's no easy answers to that question.
yeah,
That often there's a lot going on that we don't know. And that's, again, coming back to the chapters 1 and 2. How do we explain that heavenly scene, or whatever, that heavenly council? And well, that what that's showing is there was a lot going on that Satan didn't know. However we interpret that, whoever Satan, we decide he is. um, Job doesn't know everything that's going on. We also don't know everything that's going on, but we can trust God through that. And that's ultimately seen. I think the greatest answer for the question of suffering is Christ. That God suffers with us and for us. That he doesn't just force us to do something he's not willing to do himself. That he can identify with us. He can empathize with us because he's been there himself.
Yeah.
And so somehow our suffering leads to God's glory. We see that with Job. His suffering led to God's glory. And Christ's suffering led to God's glory. So that's what we see over and over. And Christ is the greatest example of that. So whenever we get tripped up with how could God let this happen to me? Well, you're not as good as Christ, and he suffered for God's glory too. So if that's going to happen to Christ, why should? And that's where Paul comes around to saying, well, if that happened to Christ, then I want to know Christ, even know him in the midst of suffering, because to suffer means I understand and know Christ better than if I don't suffer. So right there, you see Paul come to this place where he's saying, it is better that I suffer and I get to know God infinitely more through my suffering, because I find out that he is, his grace is sufficient for me in the midst of my struggle. And when there's shared experiences, you share something that is so much deeper and more powerful than just a surfacey relationship, So you talk to anyone who has a shared experience of suffering, there's a bond that never breaks between those people. I think there was a book I referenced a while back. I think it's called Into the Abyss. It was like a book on a plane crash in Canada, and this group of people have to struggle to survive and be rescued. And so there was this like I think he was a judge or a senator, I think, that was on the plane, and then this like kind of druggy, in and out of prison kind of guy who actually was in custody being transferred to his trial. So you have these two men who are so radically different. One in government, one who's just this kind of loner, just very different guys. But after this, they had a long-standing relationship together because of their shared experience of suffering.
Yeah.
So these two radically different people are brought together in friendship because of what they went through together. And so you take that's just one example, but we've all had that where when you go through an experience with someone, that sharing of the experience deepens that relationship. So through suffering, I think that's what Paul is getting at. We have a depth of relationship with Christ when we have a shared experience of suffering. And so, we can then rejoice in suffering, as we talked about Sunday, that there's a purpose behind it. It matures, it completes us, it helps us know Christ better. That was Paul's takeaway, so it can be ours as well.
Yeah. So are we ready? Are we prepared?
Right.
Willing to pray that kind of prayer? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's good. That's good. Well, good discussion. I'm looking forward to this Sunday and covering all that ground. Before we go, maybe a double feature for Love It or Hate It, since you already you gave your one. You love Christmas and the decorations.
I love Christmas. So, all right.
Yeah, Love It or Hate It.
Okay. So for my actual one, I love the Disney Plus show, The Mandalorian.
Yes.
So I was reminded of how much I love it because as I'm sitting in the waiting room with nothing else to do, I had my iPad there, and so I got caught up on The Mandalorian season 2.
Right.
Oh my goodness, that show is. I love how cinematic TV shows have become.
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, just like movie quality special effects and acting and The Mandalorian, there is some just kind of make your skin crawl moments, and especially are you caught up on it?
I am, yeah.
Yeah, so spoiler alert, cover your ears, but the ice spiders, oh my word.
Yeah.
Oh, that was creepy beyond all reason.
Yes. yeah, it is. It is. It's a great show. Corey and I are just, yeah. Sometimes he tells me he gets done with school early, and so he'll get a chance to watch an episode before I do. But yeah, that's good.
Yeah. And Baby Yoda, man, how do you not love Baby Yoda?
I know it.
Except when he ate that spider, I was ready to just like
Uh,
get
oh
him off the show. Oh,
yeah,
spoiler alert again. I'm sorry. If you haven't seen the episode, there is a spider that gets eaten, and it is disgusting.
just just innocently eating the frog eggs and the yeah. Was that the second episode?
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the ice spider babies.
right. Yeah. Oh man. Well, my love it or hate it. I'm gonna do. It's the love it leads to the hate it.
Okay.
So um, I I love the. We've got 3 big maple trees in our backyard. Love those trees.
I think I see
Love
where
the
this is going.
yeah, love the shade in the summer. Um, now, and I don't so much mind raking up the leaves. It's not bad as long as we can stay on top of it. Now, this last week, I mean, they just dropped like that. Here's the hated part. We have a dog,
Oh,
and
yes.
and if you're not, and those leaves dropped sooner than what we could get out there to clean up after the dog. So as we're raking up leaves, you know what is under those leaves,
Yeah.
and
Um,
trying to be careful. And yeah, I hate that. That just
yeah,
terrible.
that we've been experiencing that now that we have a dog too. The funny thing is our dog. So she's a Labradoodle. We
Uh-huh.
call her Queen Elsa because that she came with the name Elsa because her litter was born right after Frozen 2 had come out. So Queen
Okay.
Elsa the Labradoodle, and she really is as prissy as the prissiest of queens. She doesn't like leaves. She
Oh,
doesn't like them on walks. She gets all freaked out about it, and then she is like refusing to go to the bathroom on leaves. So we have to find a spot in our yard that's not had leaves dropped so she can go do her business. It is that dog, I swear.
and so if we get any sort of snow, it'll be interesting to see how she handles the snow then.
Yeah, yeah. So no snow for your dog, huh?
Oh, our dog loves snow.
Oh, loves snow.
Loves
Okay.
snow. I was thinking about Queen Elsa,
Yeah, no,
how
certainly.
Queen Elsa's going to handle the snow. So
She doesn't like being cold, so I'm not thinking it's going to go so well.
yeah, yeah,
But you never know. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
yeah. No, no. Our dog, of course, part husky.
Oh, so yeah,
But
that makes
loves
sense.
loves the snow up to her shoulders and bounding through the snow, and
Yep.
so
Well, it's in the blood, I think. So
yeah, definitely.
yeah, poodle and Labrador mix.
Yeah,
Maybe the Labrador side, but she's a multi-generational Labradoodle, which means now it's just Labradoodles being bred with Labradoodles. So I'm
right,
not sure how much of the lab is left and how much of the doodle still exists. So
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
taken over, I guess. But yeah,
Oh, that's good. All right. Well, so we're going to be putting the question or the phone number to send in questions. So make sure that if you're watching this, make sure you look for that on Sunday mornings. It is also you'll see that as a link or a moment in the online service, and then we'll have it in the weekly emails coming. So if you haven't
yeah, it's on
seen
the
it,
screen every Sunday.
yep,
And here's a secret: if you watch it on Facebook, I put it in the post, the phone number as well. So
there
lots
you
of
go.
places to find the number. There's no excuse to get those questions sent in. Or
Yep,
I mean, if you don't care about being anonymous, just shoot us an email too.
there you
The
go.
phone number is we just do that so that you have a way to be anonymous if you have a question you don't want to us to know who's asking. But otherwise, you can
Yeah,
ask us in any way possible. Just
there you go.
yeah, the number is just there so that we don't know who's texting in. But yeah, we
Right.
love the questions though, so keep them coming.
Yep, be good.
All
All
right.
right. Well, thanks for joining us today, and Dave, have a good restful afternoon. Glad Maggie's home.
Yep, we're enjoying being home for sure.
All right.
Not very restful in the hospital room. Every
No,
couple hours, something dings or some
right.
nurse comes in or something. So
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah,
yep.
glad you guys are back.
All right. Well, we'll see you Sunday. And if you want to look ahead, chapters 3 to 28 of the book of Job.
There you go. A little light reading.
That's right. All right. Well, have a great rest of your week.